one day we'll get it all right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ace on Music. I'm joined, as always, by my trusty producer, Mark, and my assistant, Sean.
Hello.
Today, we're going to have part 2 of our interview with Donny Wightman, who was has worked with Aerosmith. He's worked with Ringo Starr. He's one of the top tour managers and road managers in the business. And this time, we're going to talk a little bit about his time with Ringo Starr and his all-star band.
I mean, I'm hanging with the Beatles. I mean, talk about stories, and well, but even the stuff that I hear, from Ringo, some of it is like, wow, it's you catch him in a moment when he, wants to talk amongst the guys, and you sit there with your jaw open and think, wow, I'm listening to history, and and feelings of being a kid, and in 1964, and it's just mind-boggling. At the same time, he's like my uncle, and I take a bullet for him, and just wonderful human being. And again, he called me because he was told I was the kind of person that would him and his wife would be comfortable having me take him out on the road. And that was 11 years ago, and I'm still doing it. So
I'm glad you brought up Ringo, and you worked with his band, the All Stars, for a long time now. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like in order to be a member of Ringo's All Star band, you had to have had a certain number of hits before with other projects before joining Ringo's band? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah. His criteria, number one is the instrument that he needs. Whether it be keyboards or bass or guitar. And the other thing is you had to have been the primary singer on 3 big hits, and that's kind of how he, at least in the last 15, 20 years. Before, when he first started, he had huge bands, 3 drummers and 12 players. And it was more, being out with the guys and having fun and making music. Now he really enjoys just being in a band. He doesn't want to be the band leader. He shares the spotlight. When those guys are doing their hits, he gets up in the kit, and you'll see him up there. And I know you came to a show in Vegas when we did that residency with him.
Yes.
The first thing you see out of him when he's on the kit is the teeth. He's smiling ear to ear and looking around and just taking it all in and enjoying. Those guys have their moments. They're all frontmen from their own bands. They're all certified rock stars, Steve Lukather, Greg Raleigh, Todd Rundgren, Colin Hay, Graham Gouldman. I mean, it just goes on and on. Richard Page. But, one of the things he'll say will be after a show, if we're in the gym, he'll say at least once or twice a week, hey, the boys having fun. He wants to make sure everybody's happy. Everybody's having a good time. Nobody's got issues or problems, and I try to address any that there are. So he never sees them because he just wants to play. He loves being in a band, and just blessed, just really blessed to be part of that for all these years.
You mentioned the residency that Ringo and the All Stars did. Sean and I went and attended that show, as you mentioned, and one of the things that blew my mind about it was when they would do each guy, as you said, they had to have been the singer or perform on some major hits, and they play those hits as part of the All Stars. And when Greg Raleigh was doing those Santana tracks, it was like, and Lukather is such an amazing guitar player. He's definitely in the ranks of a Carlos Santana.
Right.
And
sure.
it was like I never got to see that back in the day, and it was like I felt like I kind of did now, you know.
Watching that whole set to me was like smoking a joint without smoking a joint, you know. Just watching Mr. and it just gives you a rush of like nostalgia.
Yeah. 20 hits, 22 hits, and you knew every song, and you sing along, and there was no filler, you know. It was all, you know. And Ringo did his 10 or 11, and you know, had a blend. You knew them all. Photograph and Don't Come Easy and Submarine, and,
right?
You know, Little Help. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah, I know that
good stuff.
I know that Lukather is good friends with one of the artists that I work with, Mick Box from Uriah Heep. They're always changing, and so I've got to hang out with Steve a few times and get the lowdown on him.
He's a piece of work.
But what a funny guy! I mean,
he's a really cool guy, man.
Did you see that video that he posted on YouTube a few weeks ago when he was?
The leaf blowers.
Oh, the leaf blowers! It was amazing. These leaf blowers in the neighbor's yard were going off at, you know, oh my God, o'clock in the morning, and so he went and he took his amps outside, cranked it up, and just gave them some of their own medicine. It was amazing.
How do you like that? He screamed at the end. I've been hearing about the leaf blowers for 11 years since I first met him. You know, this is nothing new.
Oh my gosh!
Well, one of
Great guy.
Just one of the questions I had about the All Stars. I mean, when you're dealing with somebody like Ringo Starr, arguably, you know, one of the most recognizable and biggest rock stars in the history of rock and roll. The guys who are there in the All Stars with him, they're all name players, no doubt. But I mean, he's a Beatle. Like, is it very much separated, or is he very much part of?
No, I mean we all stay in the same hotel. If you know, and it's going to be nice. It will be a Ritz, or it will be you know, it's always a nice hotel. We lease a nice aircraft, so these guys aren't in tour buses, and we're all together. And sound check every night. Guys sit down and have dinner together. Ringo will come in catering with the guys and hang out, and they'll all swap stories. And you know, he's got that wit that, you know, you saw in Hard Day's Night when he was ad-libbing all that great stuff. He's as sharp. Now, I would never get in a battle of wits with Ringo Starr. He'll kill you. I mean, he's nonstop. He's great, and he gives it to the guys, and they give it back. And but there is that respect. I remember, you know, when Greg Raleigh came to the first rehearsal 11 years ago, it was the Richard Page band, Todd Rundgren, Lukather, and I remember Greg was like a nervous wreck. Now, he's two-time Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, you know, co-founded Journey and Santana.
That's right.
Great guy. We call him the Duke because he always wears cowboy boots. And, you know, he lives in the Austin area. And we would go to the gym every day, you know, Ringo with his, you know, either myself or one of the other guys from our team. And every morning at 10:30, well, the guys hear this, so they all want to make their appearance. None of them are gym rats, but like he is. But they want to make a good impression. So, the, you know, second day we were at rehearsals, Greg Raleigh comes in and he's got a tank top on, and he strolls in. He's got like jeans on, but he's got cowboy boots on in the gym, and he's, you know, walking around, and, you know, throwing weights around, and, you know,
nice.
Ringo gives me the eye, like, you know, like, get a load of him with the, you know, because Ringo's got the nice, you know, sweatsuit on, and, you know, he's a professional gym goer.
Wow.
And the next day I was downtown. We were at SIR in L.A. down West Hollywood there. And I walked across the street to get some sneakers, and who's in the sneaker aisle but Greg Raleigh, picking out these obnoxious lime green sneakers that he, you know, wore for the rest of the tour at the gym, because he wanted to fit in. He wanted to be, you know, one of the guys. And, but yeah, we had a lot of fun. Great guys, and again, you know, they're all in a band. There's no band leader. You know, obviously it's Ringo, but those guys get up there and they get to shine, and great audiences, and just a lifetime of memories and good friends.
You know, one of the things that I found rather interesting was after the show, we went back to see you, and most of the band was still there. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I mean, it's a fairly regular thing after a show for bands to have kind of a post-mortem on the show that they just performed, talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
You know, and it's funny to mention that. You know, we a lot of times we'll do a runner, and you know, a runner. If you do a festival and you're the last band, you're out. You go from the stage to the cars and to the hotel because the traffic at those kind of places is terrible. So we do the same thing. We get in a van and head to the plane or head to the hotel, and the guys every night, the guys will critique. You know, they'll critique their own performances. Now Lukather, who's played on over 2,000 records with other people and a lot of huge hits, if he played a missed note, he'll be down in the dumps and he'll apologize to the whole van and they'll slap him on the back. Oh, I played this wrong. Or I played this, you know, and then they all start, you know, talking about their mistakes. But I mean, these guys are all superstars in my book, and here they are talking about a missed note and you know taking responsibility. That's pretty cool, you know.
that's exactly what my point would have been, you know, is that I sat there and I'm kind of overhearing it as I'm talking to you, and I'm thinking these are like world-class players, and you know,
Yeah,
I guess they still drop a bum note once in a while.
yeah. I remember Elton's band came over one night. We went to their show and on our night off, and they all came over and same thing. You know, somebody played a note. They apologized to to Davy Jones and oh God, I'm losing. Greg Bissonet's brother was a bass player in Ringo Elton's band. But they were apologizing. Oh, geez, you hear that? And it's just great to see. You know that these guys like really, you know, want to perform, and not just for themselves, but for the audience. They hate making mistakes. None of us hear it. We wouldn't know a missed note or a drop note or you know a one bar of music out of key. And neither, you know, the audience doesn't either. But these guys, it's very important to them that they put their best show on every night, even though it's every night.
Well, it certainly comes across. I mean, one of the guys who was in the All Stars, I don't think he currently is Todd Rundgren, and
Yep, Todd. Yep.
I originally met him. Oh, I met him the first time you introduced me to him on one of those Rock Legends cruises that we did, and it turned out.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
It turned out that he was staying in the room right next to mine, and I ran.
Lucky you.
But you know what? Like he always came across to me as rather intimidating. You know, he's very standoffish. Obviously, a very intelligent man, but we happened to both come out of our rooms or come back to our rooms at the same time, and we were at that awkward moment standing there beside each other trying to find our keys and stuff, and he started up a conversation, and we ended up standing in that hallway for about a half an hour chatting about all kinds of stuff, and I just found him to suddenly transform from this rather aloof kind of reserved guy to this just incredible fountain of stories and one of the best half an hours I ever spent in my life. So.
Yeah, and you say the intelligence. He's very well read, and I mean he's always doing crossword puzzles when when we're traveling, and just you better have your facts straight if you're giving an opinion and he's in the room, because if you're off, he'll oh no. He's very bright and again very well read. Great guy, very talented. Plays everything, every instrument.
Oh, I know.
Plays them well.
And not only an accomplished artist on his own, but has produced some of the greatest records in the history of rock and roll.
Bad Out of Hell. I mean, he took the points on that. He saw something in that and used his own money to fund that project. Those guys had nothing. They had, the original team. They were humming parts to him. And that, they sold them on just, humming, a storyline for the record. And he went to work and yeah, he's a very big part of that whole project.
Yeah, I think it was Meatloaf himself who told me a story once when I was talking to him at a festival or something where I ran into him, and I asked him about the song "Bat Out of Hell" and the the part towards the end where it's suddenly the motorcycles revving up and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that was simply them going through the final mixes and then him saying, "Oh, gee," him turning to Todd and saying, "Wouldn't it be great if there was like the sound of a motorcycle revving there?" And Todd just reached over, grabbed his guitar, and he went kind of like this, and played the piece that's on that album.
That's awesome.
So, sang a lot of the high notes too.
Yeah,
he's got a great high voice. Yeah.
Now, one of the people that's in the All-Stars that I've never had the opportunity to meet, but I would like to one day, he's a fairly new member, and that's Colin Hay from Men at Work.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about Colin? What's he been like since he joined the All-Stars?
Well, he came in 2 or 3 legs ago, and he took actually Todd's spot. Todd and Richard Page left, and him, Colin, and Grant Gouldman came in. Play bass, and Colin, just a great guy, another dry wit, always practicing. Every time you see him, he's got a guitar in his hand and he's doing scales and practicing his vocal warm-ups, and he still sounds like the records from the Men at Work stuff. And just our first leg, we're up in Vancouver, and he said, "Hey, can I take you to lunch?" And I said, "Sure." And he just wanted to pick my brain on the operation and how he should act and how he should carry himself. And just a lovely guy, and told me some writing stories of, when he wrote "Who Can That Be Now?" His family had left Scotland and moved to Australia. And he got to be about 17 or 18, and he decided he wanted to get out on his own. And he got an apartment in a seedy part of town. And every night, he'd go to bed, and 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, he'd hear this at the door, and he'd pull the sheets up over him and say, "Who can this be now?" And there was a drug dealer living next door, and they'd always knock at the wrong door. And, he was petrified in his bed, and that's where he got, the hook line for that song, and he wrote a great song, big hit.
I never knew that
around
story.
That experience. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you,
great song.
One of the most surprising performances, and I know, Sean, you and I talked about this when we saw the All-Stars, was, I have to be honest, I wasn't all that familiar with Richard Page's work. I mean, I knew the big hits from Mr. But he was a revelation in that show. I mean, that was one of the absolute highlights when that guy took the center stage.
Oh, I agree.
Amazing voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he's had a few other kind of interesting side jobs you told me about, right?
Yeah, we were, the band they were discussing, mailbox money. You get a hit or you get your residuals and stuff that comes in the mail forever, that monthly check that, they all love. And, Todd had just gotten finished telling us the Bat Out of Hell story. And then Richard just, I think we were in a van, and he just matter of factly says, "Hey, that 2.5 Men, the opening song?" And everybody looks at him, he goes, "That's me." And, the men and the high, the climb. And then when you think of it, oh yeah, you can hear Mr. in that climb, that vocal climb. And that's him.
Once you told me that story and I thought about it, I said, absolutely, how could I not have heard that before? But yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
it's the things, the people, but sometimes, artists don't want to be known for that. They don't want to get pigeonholed or it's commercial, it's too commercial, whatever. But kidding me, 2.5 Men?
Right.
I'd wear the badge. That's me on 2.5 Men.
I mean, I can imagine the checks he's gotten over the years for that.
Yeah, I know. Mailbox money.
Mailbox money. I'm going to use that term in the future. There was one other guy that you have worked with who is one of my personal favorite songwriters, and that's Graham Gouldman. And if you aren't familiar with 10cc, then you're missing out. So,
love 10cc.
Now, he played in the All-Stars at one point. Is that correct?
Yeah, he played one tour, one U.S. tour. Yeah, it was a U.S. tour. And he was committed on our next tour to do a 10cc thing over in Europe. And he blew me away. I mean, talk about another guy that's still got the chops in his voice. And I took him to Berkeley. We were in Boston. We had a show at the Wang, and we had a few days off. And I made arrangements for him to do a songwriting class at Berkeley College of Music, world renowned.
Sure.
Berkeley. And they, loved to have him. They obviously knew about him. And so I took him to the class, and I knew his 10cc stuff and the stuff he did in the show, but he got up there and he had an acoustic, and he was teaching this class, in a big auditorium. And he started going down the list of the stuff he wrote for the Yardbirds, for the Hollies, for Herman's Hermits, and plus his own stuff. And I was floored. I mean, For Your Love, Bus Stop. I mean, his stuff is amazing. And a guy, you think he's just a regular guy, just never said boo. And, he didn't know how to take us, because you can't be thin-skinned in the All-Stars, because everybody breaks everybody's chops. It's just a fun
Isn't
part
it that
of
way in every band?
But he was the new guy, and he would grab me and he'd say, do the guys like me? It's like they wouldn't be breaking the chops if they didn't like you. That's part of being in the fraternity. And he adapted, and he just started giving it back, and in his proper British tone of voice. But we had a lot of fun. Yeah, talented guy, amazing. And there's a guy Ringo called. Yep, I'll be there. He's nobody says no. Peter Frampton. I mean, you could go. This is the 30th anniversary coming up, and if you went down the list of who's been in that band, you'd be floored. You really would.
Oh,
you forget. I mean, the players over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, that brings up an interesting thing. You said that when Ringo calls, nobody says no. That would lead me to believe that he's probably got some kind of list that he has compiled somewhere of people that he would like to work with in the future.
I think he's probably already did that. He's been done with that. He's like, all right, let people call.
Well, that's the question I would have, is like, do you ever get people approaching him and saying, I'd love to be part of this?
They probably do. They probably go through, his private management. But, I know his scheduling, like he's always wanted Robin Zander. He loves Robin's voice, and and of course the Cheap Trick hits, and he plays guitar too. He plays a good rhythm guitar. Nice. But those guys are road dogs. Cheap Trick.
Yeah,
they're always working, so it's never worked out.
I mean, Robin's got one of those voices that I mean, it doesn't seem to deteriorate at all. I mean, I've seen them many times, and he's as great now as he ever was. So. Yeah,
they opened for Aerosmith for a number of years on a number of tours, and they brought it every night. Just great catalog, great guys. They love to play, played hard.
Well, Donny, I really want to thank you for being our first ever guest on this show.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed
for having me. Yeah.
And I also want to just thank you personally for everything you've done for my artists and for myself personally. I consider you to be a good friend, and I really appreciate it all. And we'll talk again in the future. Yeah, 2021 is a big year for music, hopefully. Yeah, let's hope. 2021. Right? Yeah. Yep, 2021. It's right around the corner. Oh, yes. And I'd like to thank all of you. Gents. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in and checking out the show. Remember, you can send us your feedback on acetalksmusic@gmail.com. Also, we have the exclusive content, which is Ace on Music After Hours, available to our Patreon supporters. You can check out what we talk about after the cameras stop rolling. And until we see you next time, enjoy your music.